Hi, I'm Janelle Riley. I'm with Syvantis Technologies, and today I am going to do a session on every little difference between Dynamics GP and Business Central. This is episode 3 in a series of differences videos. This episode focuses on the user interface and the differences between Dynamics GP and user interface and the Business Central user interface. So let's just jump straight into it and start to look at some of the differences. GP has a more traditional type interface as an accountant, kind of what we've had for the last 20 years or so. The interface is deployed a lot of times on your local desktop, or it is deployed via terminal server. There is a web app in Dynamics GP, but for practical purposes, a lot of people don't use it. And so most people do use a more traditional interface. Business Central is available as a web interface and also as app. So it's available as a Windows app, an Android app, and an iPhone app. It is literally the newest interface on the market right now. So because it was built by Microsoft between about 2015 and 2017, that interface came to be. So it is actually using some of the latest research in usability, etc. Search in Business Central. There is search available in Dynamics GP, but only available on the web app. So if you don't use the web app, you don't actually have that capability. But in Business Central, it's a very interesting thing. People that are regular GP users on a traditional interface are used to navigating by going across. Sometimes I've been doing it for a long time, they'll do it across the top bar, but most people go off the left-hand navigation. We'll click finance, or financials. It'll hit sales, purchasing, whatever, and then they'll work off that interface. Interestingly, we have the capability of navigating that same way in Business Central. It's all there. But weirdly, after you've been using Business Central for maybe a couple of months, you start using a search box that's up in the upper right corner, and you might search for Gen Ledger for general ledger entries, and you'll just pop that up and go, or general journal to do a general journal entry. And so you start doing kind of shortcuts. It uses fuzzy logic, so I don't have to type the whole word in. I only have to get kind of close, and it's going to guess what I'm looking for, and it's just going to pop up on the screen for me. So it is kind of an interesting and very helpful feature. Personalization in GP, you really don't personalize. In GP, you can add a few links on the left, or you can add links on the top bar, but there's not much you can really do. You get what you get with the GP interface. With Business Central, you have substantial personalization. You can change all of your list views, you can change the buttons on there, and actually, because it's a development platform, developers can pretty much do anything with the user interface that you want. And not only that, most of those things, many of those things, like adding a new field or whatever, is like nothing for them to do. It doesn't really cost you very much. It's just something that you have. Out of the box, what's interesting though on the other side is out of the box, because Dynamics GP was built in the US, most North Americans are very comfortable with that interface, and you get just what you get, but it's really standard, like a standard mid-market ERP. With Business Central, they like expose all kinds of like you're looking at a list view of vendors, and it might have all kinds of columns in there that are exposed to you, but half of them you don't even care about, right? And so you've got to remove those columns, and so you have to move things around a lot. It's almost akin to what you do as smart lists. You kind of get something, but it's not exactly what you want, so you have to personalize it. So that's just a difference in the way that it works. What we have is, I've got a snip here of what the Business Central interface actually looks like. The snip here is actually off the Windows app. And so you can see it's an app that's just installed on your PC. And the important thing to know is I can move these web parts around, and I can move the boxes around. I can add boxes, I can remove boxes, I can add links, I can remove links. So I have a lot of things I can do with it. You can see it's a much more modern looking interface than something that you would have with GP, which is an older interface. Let's talk about a bunch of other differences that we have. First of all, the windows. Because GP is typically, now again, I'm talking about the traditional interface, not the web interface. Actually, interestingly, the web interface for GP and how you navigate through the windows is actually somewhat more familiar to, similar to Business Central. But if you're on the traditional interface, you know how you can open things up and you open up in all the separate windows and they're all minimized on your screen and you can work with those. And that's whether you're using remote app, remote desktop, or you actually have it installed on your PC. It's different when you're in a browser interface because you don't have that concept of minimizing windows, right? So it's just a different way to do things, and that's actually the case on the apps as well, because apps are just different than a traditional desktop application. So, if you want to have multiple windows open, definitely you can do it. It's not a problem, but you might want to pop out the window and put it on a different screen. Or you may want to use, open another tab on your browser and do it. It just depends upon how you like to navigate, but it will feel different to you. Saving, with GP, of course, you have to save every transaction, save and close, right? With Business Central, everything's on autosave. So as you enter the transactions, they are saved. Really, you're not going to have data loss if you forget to save something, because it's all being saved as you go. And it actually is kind of interesting when you first start working in a Business Central interface versus the GP interface. The fact that you never have to save just feels like almost frightening, because you're afraid you're missing something, but you're actually not. There are really nice mobile interfaces available on Business Central. The Android and iPhone apps that you can get from the app stores, they're actually work really well. They're intuitive. You can find your way around it. You can actually enter transactions in it. Yeah, I mean, that's a smaller, device that you're working with, obviously, but you can actually do everything that you can do in the full, application on a phone or an Android. Now, where is that helpful? You might have somebody in a warehouse who only has limited functionality that they need, and they want to be able to carry it around with them and click here and there and do some things. They could easily do that on their phone. That is available in the web app for GP. It's a little more clunky. It's not as clean and simple to use as the BC mobile app is, and most people actually don't use it because it's such limited functionality with GP. And obviously, if you don't have a web app, you can't do anything on a phone, right? It's just impossible because it's too small to work with. When you're onboarding new users, GP can be kind of overwhelming, particularly for brand new users that don't know their way around GP. Because you pull up that interface and there's so much on a screen that you're trying to click on and do. Because the UI is more intuitive and more modern than what's on GP, it is actually a lot easier to onboard users. In fact, at our company, we onboard regularly GP users all the time because we have lots of GP clients as well as Business Central clients. And it literally costs our clients like less than half as much. Actually, I think it's a third of the cost to onboard a Business Central user as it is to onboard a GP user if you pay us to do it. What else do we have? Smart lists. GP, I have to tell you, smart lists are awesome. Anybody who is a GP user, 95% of them live and breathe by smart lists. And even going further, they may have smart list builder and build lots of custom smart lists. It's an awesome tool, honestly, love it. Business Central doesn't have a smart list tool. I mean, they call it a smart list, and it's supposed to be a smart list, but it's just not the same as GP. GP is just so intuitive. It's really easy to do the searches on it. It's really responsive. It's super quick. Business Central, the UI isn't as easy to work with it. It's just not as intuitive. I really, if there's one thing that I wish we had in Business Central, it would be smart lists. Will that ever happen? Maybe kind of a pseudo smart list, but I have a hard time seeing how it's going to be ever as good as the smart list we have in GP. That's just being honest with you. There is a share functionality. Microsoft is building a lot of interfaces with other applications. So with Business Central. So for those of you who are on the technical side of things, for the technical side of things, we have a lot of tools that we can use with Business Central very easily, such as Power BI is native with it, Power Automate, Power Apps, the whole Power Platform. But another thing, and of course, because Microsoft owns Excel and owns Word, it's easy for us to work with that as well. But one of the newer features that came out last year was the ability to share windows in the Teams chat. So I can have a window up and I can click a little share button on there and it'll pop in and I'll be able to actually share that with someone on Teams. Images are not really available on Dynamics GP, and if they were, you probably wouldn't want to use them because they'll just suck your, your data storage dry, right? Because they're going to use tons of storage. Images in Business Central are available on the items. So you do item images and you can pass them up to your website, etc. Customer and vendor, it's there, but most people don't use them because who wants to see a picture of their customer's face every time that they invoice them? But the main thing to understand about this is if you do have files attached in GP, such as, for example, let's say you upload copies of invoices and stuff to GP, it is going to blow up your database and you will actually have performance issues as a result of it. We have clients that have significant issues because of a lot of images of those types of things being in GP. In Business Central, you have the ability to actually store those images on Azure Blob Storage instead of in the database. And so it is just much less use of the storage space and a lot more effective use of the application. List navigation. There is list navigation in GP, and I would say of our clients, maybe 50% of them use the list navigation extensively, right? The other 50% may not even know it's there, honestly, because they've been using GP for so long, they just never actually adopted it when it came out in GP 2013. But there is availability on the upper left-hand side of your GP navigation to go to different lists and to see, lists of, sales invoices, sales quotes, purchase orders, etc. So it's intuitive, but most people don't use it, honestly, if you look across all the GP spectrum. Business Central actually has really nice list navigation, and it's used extensively. Like you run the whole system off of it. When I say awkward terms on there, what I mean by that is you've got the list navigation and you're able to filter by the list navigation, but when you do those filters, it's kind of awkward compared to GP, like Smart List, for example, or even list navigation in GP. You can say, this field, vendor name contains, ink or whatever you want to do. In Business Central, you can't do that. You actually have to know what the actual term is to use to do contains. So contains actually means asterisk. You have to put an asterisk, and then you have to put ink asterisk, right? And that's how you're going to find it, but your users have to know that. So good news is once your users are accustomed to it, piece of cake, they do it just great, but it's just not as simple as GP is. And we're almost done. We've got 2 more here. Drill back to documents. So it is multiple clicks when you have documents attached, to GP. It's multiple clicks to like drill back and pop them up. There's actually, a drill back. Oh, I'm sorry, drill back to documents. I'm sorry. So that's part of it. Like if you have attached documents, you can actually get to those much easier in Business Central. But there's also the drill back to like sales invoices, purchase invoices, etc. In GP, if I want to go pull up a sales invoice, right? What do I have to do? I go across, I go to sales, then I go and get the pallets in front of me, then I go look at inquiry, then I pull up, sales transaction inquiry, then I have to click on it. I either have to know the customer ID or I have to drill back and go ahead and select the customer name off of it, whatever, and I can pop it up, right? In Business Central, on the right-hand side of the screen, there's this fact box, and from there, it just has a list. You can just click a button and it says, here's all of the sales invoices. Click a button, here's all the purchase invoices, etc., and you can just pop it up and look at it. And then finally, for data entry, in GP, it's not flexible. It is what it is. You just tab between the windows or tab between the fields and work and pull up for data entry. In Business Central, they have a cool little feature called quick entry. And so remember how I said you could personalize your data entry. So let's say that you're an order processor and you are trying to enter, sales orders in. Your order processors probably do the exact same thing every single transaction, and they only need a handful of things to enter, right? They probably need, the date at the header, then they need to have the item number, then they have to have, the quantity. And then they may or may not adjust the sales price, right? And they may select the warehouse it's going to come from, right? So there's only a handful of fields that you need. First of all, what you can do is hide all the things they're never going to do, right? So they don't have to tab through those. But even the ones that they may occasionally change, such as the price field, they can highlight it and then make it so that it's not part of quick entry. So that what happens is when they tab through, it just skips over it, but you can still edit it and go back and do something to it. Really handy little feature that helps with data entry a lot. So talked really fast, did a ton. You're welcome to reach out to me personally or to go to Syvantis.com and go ahead to contact us, and we will reach out to you and answer any questions that you have. The next video in the series is going to be on system and administration and compare the differences between Business Central and GP on system and administration. Thanks much. Have a nice day.